She tapped him on the shoulder like it was nothing. 3 stalls into the Westfield market on a Tuesday afternoon, surrounded by the particular noise of a crowded indoor market. Vendors calling, carts rolling, children asking for things. Rafe Donovan felt a hand on his shoulder and turned around. A woman. 20-something. Canvas tote bag, both handles worn smooth. Paint under 3 of her fingernails. Not fresh, the settled kind that stayed no matter how carefully you washed. The unhurried eyes of someone who was not in a hurry because they had decided some time ago that hurrying rarely changed the outcome. She was holding his wallet. She held it out. "This fell from your jacket," she said. "Back there." Rafe took the wallet. He looked at it. Black leather. No visible ID. $40,000 in cash, organized in 4 rubber-banded stacks, and 2 cards with no names printed on them. He felt the weight of it in his palm. The familiar weight, the weight he knew before he even checked. It was all there. He looked at her. "There's $40,000 in this wallet," he said. "I know," she said. "It's yours." She turned and walked back into the crowd. Rafe stood in the Westfield market holding $40,000 and watching a woman with paint-stained fingers disappear between a cheese vendor and a bread stall. He had been in rooms with people who would have spent 40 seconds agonizing over a $20 bill they found on the ground. This woman had not opened the wallet beyond confirming whose jacket it had fallen from. She had not counted it. She had not paused. She had pushed through a crowd to give it back and then walked away without staying for the gratitude. He put the wallet back in his jacket. He followed her. He was not a man who followed people without purpose. Following people without purpose was not something his life had trained him for. Everything in Rafe Donovan's professional existence was intentional, considered, executed with the specific efficiency of someone whose decisions had consequences that outlasted the moment. This was not intentional. This was something else. He moved through the market at the distance that kept her visible without announcing his presence, and he watched. She stopped at a produce stall near the back wall. The kind of stall that put out the day-end clearance in plastic bins with handwritten signs. Marked down, "End of day." She sorted through the bins. She filled 2 bags. Not the premium items at the front of the stall, the clearance. Overripe bananas. A bag of slightly soft apples. A bunch of collard greens that had lost their crispness but none of their nutrition. She paid. He watched her do the math with the vendor before handing over bills. The specific, practiced math of someone who knows exactly what they're spending. She had enough. She had barely enough. She moved toward the market entrance. Near the entrance, on a wide concrete apron between the market doors and the street, a group of children stood in the particular organized chaos of a field trip. 8 to 10 years old, wearing matching yellow lanyards, clustered around 2 adults who were managing the energy of 12 children with the focused patience of people who had trained for this. The program coordinator, a woman in her 40s, clipboard, the specific tiredness of someone running a good operation on limited resources, was counting heads. Rafe watched from 20 feet away. The woman with the tote bag walked directly to the coordinator. She did not slow down. She did not look around for acknowledgement. She walked to the coordinator, held out both bags of clearance produce, and said something too quiet for Rafe to hear. The coordinator's face did the thing. The specific, tired, grateful thing of someone who manages a shelter program and has learned that the help that comes without ceremony is the most reliable kind. She took the bags. She pressed the woman's hand once. The woman nodded. She walked away. No ceremony. No pause for the children to thank her. No lingering. She pulled her canvas tote onto her shoulder and walked toward the street exit, and that was the entirety of it. Rafe stood 20 feet away and did not move for a moment. He had just watched a woman return $40,000 without hesitation. Then spend what she had left, what was clearly most of what she had, on clearance produce for children in a shelter program. Then leave without staying for a single word of thanks. He looked at the coordinator, still holding the bags, watching the market entrance where the woman had gone. He crossed to her. "The woman who just gave you those bags," he said. "Do you know her?" The coordinator looked at him. "Who's asking?" she said. "Someone she helped earlier today," he said. The coordinator looked at the entrance. She looked at him. She told him a name. Rafe's hand, still in his jacket pocket against the wallet, went completely still. That name. He knew that name. Not from the market. Not from anything that had happened this afternoon. From a file. From a conversation 6 months ago. From the specific context that stopped him in the middle of the Westfield market with $40,000 in his pocket and made everything about this Tuesday afternoon feel like something other than coincidence. Her name was Lena Marsh. 27 years old. Freelance illustrator. Children's books, educational materials. The kind of work that paid inconsistently and required the specific resourcefulness of someone who had learned to make a budget work in multiple directions simultaneously. Rafe went home with the name and gave it to Price that evening. Price called back at 11. Lena Marsh, Price said. Clean background. No record. Graduated with an art degree 7 years ago from the State University. Has been doing freelance illustration work since. Shares a studio apartment on Clement Street with a woman named Rosa. He paused. She runs a voluntary art program 3 mornings a week at the Millbrook Community Shelter. I've been doing it for 2 years. Unpaid. The children at the market today, Rafe said. Were they from Millbrook? The shelter runs a field trip program on Tuesdays, Price said. Partners with the market for educational visits. What's her connection to Millbrook? Rafe said. Price was quiet for a moment. She grew up there, Price said. Not as a visitor. As a resident. Her and her mother. She was 11 to 14 in that shelter before her mother stabilized their situation. Rafe pressed his hand flat on the desk. He looked at the wallet still beside the desk lamp where he had set it when he came in. And her connection to me, he said. The name. Why do I know it? Because of her father, Price said. Daniel Marsh. The desk lamp made a warm circle. The rest of the room was quiet. Tell me, Rafe said. Daniel Marsh was a supply chain manager for one of Donovan Group's subsidiary logistics firms, Price said. 12 years ago. He was involved in a dispute with his direct manager, a man named Gerald Holt, over reported irregularities in the subsidiary's accounting. Marsh filed an internal complaint. The complaint was suppressed. Marsh was let go 6 weeks later. Rafe held the desk. Marsh filed the complaint and was terminated, he said. Yes, Price said. He died 8 months after the termination. Heart attack. He was 44. Pause. Lena was 13. Rafe pressed both hands flat on the desk. He sat with this. A woman who had grown up in a shelter after her father lost his job for doing the right thing. For reporting irregularities in a company that was, at several removes, connected to Donovan Group. A woman who came back to that shelter as an adult and ran a free art program. Who returned $40,000 without counting it. Who spent the clearance money on produce for the children in the shelter field trip. Who did all of it without ceremony, without audience, without staying for a single word of thanks. Gerald Holt, Rafe said. Where is he now? Still with the subsidiary, Price said. He's been the operations director for 8 years. And the complaint, Rafe said. The one Marsh filed 12 years ago. Suppressed, Price said. Filed internally and closed without formal review. Was it accurate? Rafe said. Pause. I'm going to need until morning to look at the subsidiary's accounting from that period, Price said. Morning, Rafe said. He ended the call. He sat at the desk. He looked at the wallet beside the lamp. He looked at his hands. The next morning at 8 o'clock he went to the Millbrook Community Shelter. He had been to the shelter once before, briefly. A donation event 2 years ago, the kind of obligatory institutional engagement that appeared on his calendar and was managed by his assistant and required approximately 90 minutes of his time. He had not seen the art program room on that visit. He asked the shelter's director, a man named Franklin who had the specific measured warmth of someone who had been doing this work for 20 years and no longer needed to perform it, if he could see the program rooms. Franklin walked him through. The art program room was at the back of the building. Small, 6 tables, chairs sized for children, supply shelves along one wall. Every shelf organized, supplies sorted by type and size, containers labeled in a clean handwriting that he recognized from the sign at the market vendor's stall when Lena had checked the clearance price. Her handwriting. On the supply labels. On the schedule pinned to the door. On the names of the children's completed projects, still displayed on the wall. 18 small paintings arranged in a grid, each one labeled with a child's first name in the same clean hand. Rafe stood in the art program room and looked at 18 small paintings. Kids' paintings. Messy, vivid, the the specific uninhibited color of children who had been told that what they made was worth displaying. He pressed his hand flat against the doorframe. He thought about a 13-year-old girl in this building. He thought about what it did to a child to grow up in a shelter because the person who reported wrongdoing was let go for reporting it. He thought about that same person coming back 14 years later to run a free art program. He thought about Gerald Holt, still the operations director. He had a question now. And Price's call was coming. Price called at 9:15. The subsidiary accounting from 12 years ago, Price said. I have access to the archived records through the group's compliance database. Pause. The irregularities Daniel Marsh reported were real. Rafe was at his desk. He pressed his hand flat. What kind of irregularities? He said. Invoice fraud, Price said. Gerald Holt was approving payments to a vendor that did not exist. A shell company, registered in Delaware, single-page filing, no operational history. Over 14 months, approximately $320,000 in payments. Holt was stealing from the subsidiary, Rafe said. Through a shell company he controlled, Price said. The fraud stopped 8 months after Marsh was terminated. Which suggests Marsh's complaint got close enough to the issue that Holt needed to close the shell company and stop the payments. Pause. But Marsh was gone. The complaint was suppressed. The audit that would have caught it never happened. Rafe held the desk with both hands. Holt was stealing, he said. Marsh reported it. Holt had him fired. And then Marsh died. 8 months after the termination, Price said. 44 years old. Heart attack. And Holt has been the operations director for 8 years, Rafe said. Promoted 3 years after the Marsh complaint was closed, Price said. Rafe looked at the desk. He looked at the wallet still sitting beside the lamp. He had not returned it to his safe. He had left it on the desk where he could see it. He did not analyze why. Does Holt know who Lena Marsh is? He said. I don't know, Price said. She's not visible in any business context that would intersect with the subsidiary. She runs a shelter art program under a foundation grant. Foundation grant, Rafe said. The Millbrook Foundation, Price said. 3-year grant for the art program. The grant expires in 6 weeks. Rafe pressed his lips together. Is it being renewed? He said. Pause. The foundation's grant committee meets next month, Price said. I don't have visibility into the renewal decision. Find out, Rafe said. Price said he would. Rafe ended the call. He sat. He thought about the grant expiring in 6 weeks. He thought about 18 small paintings on a shelter wall. He thought about a woman who spent her clearance money on produce for the children and walked away without staying for the thanks. He thought about Gerald Holt in an operations director's chair 8 years after he got away with it. He thought about Daniel Marsh. He picked up the wallet from the desk. He put it in the safe where it belonged. He stood at the safe for a moment. He went to the shelter at 3 that afternoon. Not for Franklin. For the program. The art program ran Tuesday and Thursday mornings, according to the schedule on the door. This was a Tuesday, not a program day. Lena was there anyway. He found her in the program room alone, with a canvas propped against the supply shelf and paint on her hands again. Not the clearance paint stains from yesterday. Fresh ones. She looked up when he appeared in the doorway. She looked at him for a moment. You followed me yesterday, she said. Not accusatory. Stating a fact she had apparently already known. He held the doorframe. Yes, he said. Why? She said. Because you handed back $40,000, he said, and then spent what you had on clearance produce for shelter kids. I wanted to understand what I was looking at. She held the brush. She looked at the canvas. And now you do, she said. No, he said. I have more questions. She held the brush. She set it on the edge of the palette. She looked at him. Rafe Donovan, she said. That's who you are. He held the doorframe. You know who I am, he said. I looked up the wallet, she said. The cards. It didn't take long. She held her hands, paint-stained, steady. I know who you are. I know what the Donovan Group is. She held his gaze. I returned the wallet because it was the right thing to do. Not because of who it belonged to. He held the doorframe. Your father worked for a Donovan subsidiary, he said. Her hands went still. Not trembling. Just, still. Yes, she said. He filed a complaint 12 years ago, Rafe said. It was suppressed. She looked at the canvas. She looked at the brush on the palette. I know, she said. Quiet. Completely flat. The specific flatness of a fact that had been carried for a long time. Did you know the complaint was accurate? He said. She looked at him. Yes, she said. My father kept copies of everything. Rafe held the doorframe. Where are they? He said. She held his gaze. She evaluated, the rapid, practiced assessment of someone who had learned to be careful about what they shared and with whom. She set the brush in the cleaning water. She wiped her hands on the cloth beside the palette. Why does it matter now? She said. He's been gone for 12 years. Because the man who had him fired is still there, Rafe said. And I just learned why. She held his gaze. Her jaw tightened once. Gerald Holt, she said. Yes, he said. She looked at the canvas. She looked at the 18 paintings on the wall, the children's work still displayed from the last session. She held her hands flat on the supply shelf. The copies of everything my father kept, she said slowly. They're in a box at my apartment. She held the shelf. I've had them for 12 years. Have you ever shown them to anyone? He said. Who would I have shown them to? She said. The question sat in the room. She had spent 12 years with evidence her father had collected and nowhere to take it. Until a Tuesday afternoon at the Westfield market. She brought the box the next morning. Not to his office. He had offered his office and she had declined, and he had understood without requiring explanation that coming to the Donovan Group building was a different category of step than bringing the box. They met at the shelter program room. She set the box on one of the children's tables. He sat across from it. She remained standing. The box was a standard file box, the kind sold at office supply stores, brown with a lid. The top had her father's handwriting, complaint documentation, v. Marsh, do not discard. She had written the same warning on 4 sides of the box in the same handwriting. She had been protecting this for 12 years. Take your time, Rafe said. She looked at the box. He kept everything, she said. Every email. Every invoice. He printed the shell company registration from the state database. He had the vendor payment approvals with Holt's signature on them. She pressed her hand against the lid. He submitted the internal complaint with all of it attached. They told him it was under review. She held the box. 3 weeks later they told him it had been closed. Insufficient evidence. She looked at Rafe. The same evidence I have in this box. He held the table. He did not look at the box yet. He looked at her. How old were you when you found the box? He said. She pressed her lips together. He showed it to me the week before he died, she said. He was sick by then. The stress of the termination, the job search that wasn't going anywhere, the financial pressure. He was 44 and he looked older. She looked at the box. He said, Lena, this is important. Keep this. Don't let anyone tell you it doesn't matter. She held the lid. And then 8 months later he was gone. Rafe looked at the table. The small table with the children's supply labels in her handwriting. He looked at it for a long moment. After he died, he said. We had 6 months, she said. My mother and I. His insurance covered 6 months. And then we moved. She looked at the window. The shelter it wasn't bad. Franklin ran it the same way he runs it now. Safe. Organized. He treated the families like they were there because of circumstances, not because of failure. She held the box. But I was 13 and I had a box of documents that said my father had been right, and no one who could do anything about it. Rafe held the table. He thought about a 13-year-old girl in this building with a file box. Your mother, he said. She rebuilt, Lena said. It took 2 years. She's a nurse now. Has been for 8 years. She's good at it. She held the box. She doesn't know I still have the box. She doesn't know she moved forward. I didn't want to pull her back. But you didn't move forward on this, he said. I moved forward on everything else, she said. I just didn't put the box away. She looked at him. Every year I thought, maybe this year. Maybe I'll find someone who can do something with this. She held the lid. And every year the someone was harder to imagine than the year before. He held the table. And here, right here at the center of this story, we want to stop. Because this is the question that lives inside it. Have you ever had something that proved you were right? evidence, documentation, the truth, but nowhere to take it? No one with the power to receive it? Have you ever watched someone do wrong and get away with it because you were on the wrong side of the power balance? And have you ever held on to the proof anyway, for years in a box with a warning on the lid, because putting it away felt like surrendering? Tell us in the comments. Because what Rafe does next is the answer that comes from the right person finally receiving what has been waiting 12 years. He opened the box. She stood beside it. He read for 40 minutes. The shell company registration. The invoice approvals with Holt's signature on them. The email chain from Marsh to his direct line manager, then to HR, then to the subsidiary's compliance officer. The response. 3 weeks later, 2 paragraphs. Complaint reviewed and closed, insufficient evidentiary basis. He looked at the invoice approvals. He looked at the shell company registration. He looked at the Donovan Group internal complaint form with Daniel Marsh's handwriting across the top. Careful, methodical, the documentation of someone who had worked in supply chain and understood how to build a paper record. He pressed his hands flat on the table. This was sufficient evidentiary basis, he said. Yes, she said. In 2013 they told your father it wasn't, he said. Yes, she said. Because Holt had friends in the compliance department, he said. She held the shelf. She said nothing. I'm going to take this, he said. The full box. I'll have it scanned and returned to you by end of the week. She held the shelf. She looked at the box. What are you going to do with it, she said. What should have been done with it in 2013, he said. She held the shelf. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were steady. He was 44 years old, she said. He did everything right. I know, Rafe said. Gerald Holt is still there, she said. Not for much longer, he said. She held the shelf. She looked at the box. She pressed her lips together. She nodded. He picked up the box. He walked to the door. He stopped. The art program grant, he said. It expires in 6 weeks. She looked at him. Yes, she said. I'll look into the renewal, he said. She held the shelf. Don't, she said. Quiet. Firm. Not because of this. Not because of my father or the wallet or any of it. She held his gaze. If it renews on its merits. He held the doorframe. He held it and looked at her. He said. He walked out with the box. He did not look back. But he was already thinking about what Price was going to find when he looked at the Millbrook Foundation's grant renewal process. And what Price found the next morning was not what either of them had anticipated. Price called at 8. The Millbrook Foundation Grant Committee, Price said. 6 members. One of them is Gerald Holt. Rafe's hand on the phone went still. Holt is on the foundation committee, he said. He's been on it for 3 years, Price said. It's the kind of civic board position that looks good in annual reports. Pause. The committee has 3 votes in favor of renewal and 3 abstentions at the current count. The deciding vote goes to the committee chair. Another pause. Holt is the committee chair. Rafe set the phone on the desk. He picked it up. Holt is going to kill the grant, he said. The preliminary recommendation document shows the program rated highly on all evaluated criteria, Price said. Academic outcomes, family feedback, program consistency. The only note against renewal is a budget allocation concern flagged by the chair. Pause. The budget allocation concern is not based on the Foundation's actual reserves. I've looked at the Foundation's financial statements. They have the resources for renewal. He fabricated the budget concern, Rafe said. It's not supported by the actual numbers, Price said. Why would Holt kill the program? Rafe said. 2 possibilities, Price said. 1. Coincidence. He doesn't know who runs the program and the fabricated budget concern is his standard operating method on the committee. He paused. 2. He does know who Lena Marsh is. And he's been waiting. Rafe held the phone. He thought about a man who had stolen $320,000 from a subsidiary, gotten away with it, risen to operations director, and had now spent 3 years on a community foundation committee where he was the chair. A man who had spent 12 years watching for anything connected to Daniel Marsh. Find out which one it is, Rafe said. Price called back at noon. He knows, Price said. I found a data request from the Foundation's administrative system, submitted under Holt's login 6 months ago, for the full application history of the Millbrook Art Program grant, including the program coordinator's name. 6 months ago, Rafe said. He's known about the program for 6 months. He's been on the committee for 3 years, Price said. But he didn't run the application name check until 6 months ago. Something triggered it. Rafe held the desk. What happened 6 months ago? He said. The shelter's annual report was published, Price said. It included a photo essay on the art program. The coordinator's name is in the caption. He had seen her name in a shelter annual report and run the check. And for 6 months he had been positioning himself to kill the grant. The committee meeting is in 3 weeks, Price said. Rafe stood from the desk. He went to the window. Outside, the city moved through its Wednesday afternoon without awareness of what was being assembled in an office on the 14th floor. He called Lena. She answered on the 3rd ring. I need to tell you something, he said. About the grant. She was quiet. He told her. Holt on the committee. The fabricated budget concern. The data request 6 months ago. The photo caption in the annual report. She was very quiet for a long moment. He's been on the foundation committee for 3 years, she said. Yes, Rafe said. He's been positioning to kill the grant, she said. For at least 6 months, Rafe said. She was quiet. He heard her breathing. He heard the specific sound of someone absorbing information that reorganized their understanding of the past 6 months. The children, she said. Quiet. Just the 2 words. I know, he said. He doesn't care about the budget, she said. No, Rafe said. He cares that I exist, she said. That I'm still here. That I didn't just go away. Her jaw was in her voice now, the tightness of it. He made sure my father went away and now he's been waiting to make sure I go away too. Rafe held the window frame. He held it with his hand flat against the glass. He's not going to make sure of anything, he said. Pause. Rafe, she said. Quiet. He waited. Don't do anything that makes this about you and him, she said. The grant should survive because the program is good. Not because you have leverage over him. He held the glass. There's a difference between leverage and accountability, he said. I know, she said. I'm asking you to make sure you know which one you're doing. He pressed his hand flat against the glass. He thought about Daniel Marsh's handwriting on a complaint form. He thought about the box with the warning labels. He thought about a 13-year-old girl carrying both. I know the difference, he said. She held the phone. Okay, she said. He ended the call. He called his legal director. A woman named Claire who had been with Donovan Group for 11 years and who received unusual requests with the specific, measured efficiency of someone who had stopped being surprised by them. Gerald Holt, he said. Operations Director at Meridian Logistics. Our subsidiary. I need an independent audit of the financial records from his time as director and his time before it, going back 14 years. He paused. I also need the internal complaint filed by an employee named Daniel Marsh in 2013 located from our archives and reviewed. Claire said, How fast? 2 weeks, he said. I'll need to bring in external auditors, she said. Bring them, he said. He ended the call. He called Price. The Foundation Audit Committee, he said. The Millbrook Foundation's own financial auditing process. How often do they conduct independent reviews? They're required every 3 years, Price said. Their last review was 4 years ago. They're overdue. Who triggers an independent review? Rafe said. Any 2 members of the board can request one, Price said. Are there board members who are not on Holt's side of the vote? Rafe said. 3, Price said. The 3 who voted in favor of renewal. Get me contact information for all 3, Rafe said. He had the contacts by 2 in the afternoon. He made 3 calls. Each one lasted under 5 minutes. Each one delivered the same information. The Foundation's financial audit was overdue. The budget allocation concern used to justify a grant denial was not supported by the Foundation's actual financial position, and a formal audit review could be triggered by a joint request from 2 board members. All 3 said they would discuss it. 2 of them called back within the hour. The joint audit request was filed by 4:30. Holt received notice of the Foundation audit by 5. He called his attorney at 5:15. He sat in his office at Meridian Logistics with his hands flat on his desk and the specific expression of a man who had spent 12 years believing he had closed something completely. He had been wrong. The Donovan Group audit of Meridian Logistics began the following Monday. External auditors, independent firm, full scope. Holt was notified on Friday afternoon. He responded to the notification with the particular managed calmness of someone who had prepared for a version of this moment, who had assumed at some point over 14 years that the closeness of Daniel Marsh's complaint might eventually be followed by something, and had spent some of those years ensuring his own paper trail was constructed carefully. What he had not prepared for was Price. Price had been building the financial picture from Donovan Group's own compliance database for 4 days. The shell company from 2012, the one Marsh had identified, had been dormant for 12 years. But the dormancy had not been cleaned. Price found a series of small irregular transfers in the 18 months before the shell company was closed. Transfers that ran through 3 intermediate accounts before reaching a personal account held under a family member's name. $347,000. Not $320 as initially estimated. $347. The additional 27 had come in the 2 months between Marsh's termination and the shell company's closure. He had kept stealing after he got Marsh fired. He had used the cleared space to extract an additional $27,000 before closing the loop. Rafe sat at his desk on Thursday evening with Price's full documentation. He pressed both hands flat on the surface. He held them there for a moment. He picked up the phone. He called Lena. "The audit is underway," he said. "Price has the documentation on the original fraud. The amount was larger than what your father identified, $347,000 total." She was quiet. "He kept stealing after my father was fired," she said. "For 2 months," he said. "Until he closed the shell company." She held the phone. She was quiet for a long moment. "The documentation from my father's box," she said. "Is it being used?" "It forms part of the evidentiary basis," he said. "Your father's work is part of what the auditors are verifying against." She held the phone. She pressed her lips together. "What happened to Holt?" she said. "The audit findings go to our legal team," he said. "The scale of it crosses the threshold for criminal referral. Financial fraud at this level, sustained over 14 months with a cover-up that included a suppressed internal complaint and a wrongful termination. That's multiple charges." He held the phone. "He's not going to be able to manage this one closed." She held the phone. He heard her breathing. "My father died at 44, she said. "I know," he said. "He was right," she said. "About everything. And no one," she stopped. "For 12 years nobody." "I know," he said. Quiet. She held the phone. She held it and said nothing for a moment. "The art program," she said. Pulling back from the edge of something. "The foundation audit found the budget allocation concern was not supported by the financial position," he said. "The committee chair's documentation was not factually accurate. The 3 board members who requested the audit have filed a formal challenge to the denial recommendation." He paused. "The grant renewal is going to a full board vote next week. Without Holt as chair." She was quiet. "Without Holt," she said. "He's on administrative leave pending the foundation's own governance review," he said. Which was triggered when the audit flagged the discrepancy between his budget concern and the actual financials. She held the phone. "He's going to lose everything," she said. "Yes," Rafe said. She was quiet for a long moment. "My father had everything taken from him," she said. "His job. His health. The last year of his life." She held the phone. "And Holt got a promotion." "Yes," Rafe said. "And now," she stopped. "Now the documentation your father kept is part of an audit that's going to produce a criminal referral," Rafe said. She held the phone. He heard the specific sound of someone finding the edge of something they had been carrying for a very long time and discovering that the edge had arrived. She started. She stopped. "I need to call my mother." "Yes," he said. "You should." She held the phone. "Rafe," she said. He waited. "Thank you," she said. "Not for the grant. Not for any of the practical things." She held the phone. "For opening the box. For reading it. For treating what was in it like it mattered." He held the phone. He pressed his hand flat on the desk. He looked at the desk. It mattered in 2013, he said. Someone should have treated it that way then. They didn't, she said. No, he said. I'm sorry for that. She was quiet. I'll call my mother, she said. She ended the call. He sat at the desk. He pressed both hands flat. He looked at the clean surface of it. He thought about a box with a warning label in four-sided handwriting. He thought about a Tuesday afternoon at the Westfield Market. He thought about paint under 3 fingernails. He thought about 18 small paintings on a shelter wall. He pressed his hands flat. He looked at the desk. He thought about the $40,000 she had handed back without hesitating. He thought about everything that had come from that moment. From one person handing back something that was not theirs without counting it, without ceremony. He thought about what that said about who she was. And about what it meant that her father had been exactly the same. The same specific honesty. The same uncalculated integrity. Like something that ran in families. Like something that couldn't be taken away even when everything else could. He stood from the desk. He went to the window. He pressed his hand flat against the glass. He stayed there for a while. The grant was renewed the following Thursday. Full board vote, 5-1 in favor. The dissenting vote was a board member connected to a financial relationship with the Whitfield Foundation, which itself had a relationship with the subsidiary's management structure. Rafe noted the connection. Price was already looking at it. Lena received the renewal notification by email at 9:40 in the morning. She was in the program room when Rafe arrived at 10. She had 18 children around 6 tables and the specific focused energy of a room in the middle of creating something. She looked up when he appeared in the doorway. He held up one finger. Wait. She finished what she was showing a child at the nearest table. The specific way to hold a wide brush for a wash stroke. The demonstration done twice until the child tried it and got it. He came to the door. 5 more minutes, she said. I just need to get them to the next stage. I can wait, he said. He sat on the bench in the corridor outside. He listened to the program room. The sounds of 12 children painting. The quiet concentration punctuated by occasional requests and small arguments, and the specific sound of brushes on paper and the satisfaction of a thing being made. 5 minutes passed. 10. He sat on the bench and listened. A child appeared in the doorway. A girl, maybe 9, with her hair in 2 braids and paint on her cheek and the matter-of-fact boldness of a child who had decided this was her territory and was receiving visitors. Are you Lena's friend? She said. I'm getting there, he said. She evaluated this. She talks about the man from the market, she said. He held the bench. Does she? He said. She said he was good, the girl said. Like it was a settled question. She went back inside. Lena appeared 3 minutes later. She came out and sat on the bench beside him with the specific ease of someone who had been in motion for 2 hours and was grateful for the pause. Maya, she said. The one who was just here. She's been with us 6 months. She says you described me as good, he said. I said you did a good thing, she said. There's a difference. He held the bench. Is there, he said. She held the bench. She held it and looked at the wall across the corridor. A display of previous session work, different series, mounted in a neat grid. My father was good, she said. He did a good thing. They didn't stick together in his case. He held the bench. They stick together in this one, he said. She held the bench. She looked at the wall. The grant is for 3 years, she said. After that I'll have to apply again. Yes, he said. I don't want it to exist because of what Holt did, she said. I don't want it to exist because of any of this. She held the bench. I want it to exist because what happens in that room matters. It exists because what happens in that room matters, he said. The board vote was 5-1 on merit. The documentation was clear. She held the bench. She pressed her lips together. My mother called me last night, she said. After I told her about Holt. About the audit. He waited. She cried, Lena said. She hasn't. I've never heard her cry about my father. She's been forward the whole time. Every year. Just forward. She held the bench. She cried last night for about 20 minutes and then she said, I want to go see the program room. He held the bench. He held it and said nothing. She's coming Saturday, Lena said. He held the bench. That's good, he said. Yes, she said. She looked at the wall. She looked at the program room door. "Thank you," she said. "For the last time. I don't want to keep thanking you." "Then don't," he said. She pressed her lips together. "Are you going to come back?" she said. The direct version of the question. He held the bench. "Yes," he said. She held the bench. "To the shelter?" she said. "To see you," he said. She held the bench. She held it and looked at the wall. "The program runs Tuesday and Thursday mornings," she said. "And Saturday afternoons in fall." He held the bench. "I'll find Saturdays in my calendar," he said. She pressed her lips together. The corner of her mouth moved. "Saturday afternoons are louder," she said. "More children." "I can manage loud," he said. She looked at the corridor. She stood. She went back to the program room. He sat on the bench for another moment. He heard Maya's voice from inside, asking about the wide brush stroke again, demanding a second demonstration. He pressed his hand flat on the bench. He breathed. He stayed. Gerald Holt was indicted in February. 6 counts of financial fraud. 1 count of falsifying business records. The criminal referral from the Donovan Group audit had been received by the U.S. Attorney's Office in December, and the investigation that followed had, as these investigations did, found more than the initial referral contained. The shell company from 2012 was the foundation. But it was not the only one. There had been a second operation, smaller, more careful, running through a different subsidiary at a different time. Price found it in 3 weeks. The auditors confirmed it in 6. Holt had been doing this for 20 years. He had been doing it carefully, patiently, with the specific precision of someone who believed that as long as the individual amounts stayed below detection thresholds and the complaints were managed away, the accumulation would never be visible. He had been wrong. Because Daniel Marsh had printed everything. Had kept everything. Had written "do not discard" on 4 sides of a box. And his daughter had kept it for 12 years. Waiting for someone who could receive it. Lena's mother came to the shelter on a Saturday in March. Her name was Carol. "I'm 53 years old. A nurse at St. Marcus Hospital for 8 years, with the specific grounded warmth of someone who had rebuilt something from nothing and was not in the habit of apologizing for how long it had taken." She stood in the program room doorway on a Saturday afternoon. She looked at the supply shelves with Lena's handwriting on the labels. She looked at the current session's work displayed on the wall. She looked at 12 children at 6 tables. She pressed her hand against the door frame. Lena was at the far table, leaning over a child's canvas, pointing at something specific. She looked up. She saw her mother. He straightened. He came across the room. She hugged her mother in the doorway. Carol held on. Carol held on for a long time, with the specific grip of a woman who had been holding herself forward for 14 years and had just been given permission to stop moving for a moment. Rafe was on the bench in the corridor. He had arrived at 2 and the program had been underway, and Lena had pointed at the bench on her way past and he had sat. He heard the grip from the bench. He stayed on the bench. He pressed his hand flat on the surface. He thought about a file box. He thought about a 13-year-old girl writing "do not discard" on 4 sides of it. He thought about what it took to hold something for 12 years and not put it away. This is what this story is really about. Not the wallet. Not the $40,000 that started a Tuesday afternoon in motion. The wallet was just the door. What was behind it was a woman who had grown up in a shelter because her father did the right thing, and who had spent the years since running a free art program in the same shelter, and spending clearance money on produce for the children's field trips, and handing back $40,000 without hesitating because it was not hers. Not because she had forgotten what it cost her. Not because she had forgiven the cost. Because she had decided, at some point between 13 and 27, that the cost did not change what she was. That was Daniel Marsh's daughter. That was also Daniel Marsh. This is the thing that 12 years of a man getting away with it had not touched. He had taken the job. He had taken the years. He had tried to take the grant. He had not touched the thing that made her put the clearance produce in the coordinator's hands and walk away before anyone could thank her. Some things don't get taken. Before you go, we want to ask you something real. Have you ever held on to something for a long time? Proof, documentation, a truth that should have mattered, because you had nowhere to take it yet? Have you been the person with the file box, waiting for the right person to walk through the door? And if you have, did you keep it? Did you keep the warning labels on all 4 sides? Tell us in the comments. We are a community from all over the world, from New York to Texas, from the Pacific coast to the deep south, from the UK to Canada to Australia. And every comment tells us something true about what people carry and why they carry it. If this story moved you today, share it with someone who has been waiting for the right person to receive what they have been holding. Tell them, keep the warning labels. The right person is coming. We'll see you in the next story. Stay kind.